South Africa is losing billions worth of rands in public property to vandals and criminal syndicates. From PRASA to Transnet railway lines to cell phone network towers being destroyed, and the damage to public property has continued unabated. Schools, libraries, police stations and clinics often become collateral damage during public protest. Is this a sign of a country descending into chaos and lawlessness? Good evening and welcome to Unfiltered. I am Aldrin St-Pierre. Tonight we ask you, does vandalism of state infrastructure amount to anarchy in South Africa? Remember that you can join this conversation by using the hashtag SABC Unfiltered. That is hashtag SABC Unfiltered. With us tonight, we will be joined by the Minister of Transport, that is Fikile Mbalula, as well as Farida Benjamin, who is the Executive Manager of Insurance Operations at the South African Special Risk Insurance Association, or SASRIA, and Mokone Rachitanga, who is a political consultant, will be joining us for those conversations. But first of all, let's start off here and listen to what Minister Tito Mboweni had to say during his budget speech last week.
Government is committed to a 791.2 billion rand in infrastructure investment. We are already partnering with the private sector and other players to roll out infrastructure through initiatives such as the blended finance system. However, all these efforts to expand infrastructure will be wasted if the end user does not pay a cost-reflective tariff for usage. The other thing, Honorable President, is a tendency amongst us, or some amongst us, to destroy infrastructure. We build today, somebody bans tomorrow. We build a police station, they ban it, tomorrow they demonstrate that they need a police station. Doesn't make sense.
Indeed, it doesn't make sense. Let's ask the Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, about what his assessment is of the destruction of public property, especially in the portfolio that he leads, which includes Transnet as well as PRASA. Then we'll be also in conversation with Farida Benjamin, as I've indicated, and Mokone Rachitanga is joining us for this conversation as well. Minister, good evening and welcome to the show. How would you characterize the destruction of public property as we've seen over the past few years?
Good evening to you, Aldrin, and the listeners. Thank you for having us. The destruction of property is a criminal act. It's a criminal act, and it must be understood as such. To color code it and talk nice about it, anger of people, there's no anger that lead to vandalism of public property. The people who vandalize, they vandalize with the sole purpose of stealing and taking that to markets, underworld, to sell. Like in our case, copper cables, it's big. And with the shutdown at level 5, you have seen the vandalism of train stations across. So it's a criminal act. We have established that there are laboratories in the country that are operating. They melt the copper cable, they export it via Mozambique to East Asia, loads and lots of money, just like Mandrax and drugs laboratories and all of that. It's a syndicate that operate working hand in hand with backyard mechanics and all of that. That's where PRASA property and Transnet end up, in the backyard laboratories in the townships and all of that, mostly operated even by people who are foreigners in our country, who are basically executing. They work with people inside. It's an inside job. Some of the people who lead them to this vandalism and stealing of property, they are working from inside.
What do you mean?
So
it's an inside job?
Act. It's an inside job. It's a criminal activity of syndicates that operate in a form of organized crime. and it must be understood as such.
When you say an inside job, do you mean that people who work for PRASA, those who work for Transnet, are part of this syndicate?
We have found in Heidelberg, in a laboratory where we arrested people there, when we busted the laboratory, we have found that the person involved in that laboratory is some people who are working at PRASA, and who every day take the copper from the company to go and install it in our corridors, and they are not taking it there, they are taking it to the library to melt it. So we found that, and that is why when I spoke to Shamila, the NDPP, and together with the minister, and which they've come to the party, you would have seen 2 weeks back that people have been charged with serious economic crimes like economic sabotage, and they were sentenced to over 100 years in jail for that. And that is what we have agreed in our fight back strategy for these criminal syndicates, that we need to charge them with economic sabotage, because what they are doing is not just simple theft, it's sabotaging the economy. The non-operation of the trains brings the service to a standstill. It affects the mobility of workers to and from work, and that's what it happens. It's an economic sabotage. And we don't want minnows. We want the real deal, the real guys, the big guys who are basically responsible for this. So our counterintelligence work must lead us to those criminals.
Okay, and we'll come back to that point, Minister. Let me just quickly bring in Farida into the conversation. Farida, from the work that you have done in Sasria, what is it that you've picked up about the trends of destruction of public property over the past few years?
So what we've experienced at Sasria is, over the last 5 years more so, that the service delivery protest makes up circa 88% of the claims that we receive at Sasria. So in terms of the mandate that we've got and the cover that we give, the perils is specifically for material damages to property of private individuals, businesses, and government entities. And we have noted over the last 5 years a significant increase in claims coming through to Sasria due to service delivery protests. And these claims, if we look at our financial year of 2018-2019, was just circa 1.5 billion rand, and the follow-up year to that, which is the 2019-2020 financial year, just under R1 billion worth of claims again. And in this current financial year that we find ourselves, due to the lockdown levels that's been implemented, we found that there has been a decrease in service delivery protest or protest in general, obviously with the restrictions in place, but still, again, 88% of the claims that we do receive comes in from service delivery protests. And these protests is basically in terms of the risk that's coming through. It's more violent, and it's also destruction of property. And that is what we basically cover. So we see that this is a trend that's been increasing over the number of years. And as I've said, in the 2018-19 financial year of 1.5 billion payout, circa 80% of that was due to service delivery protests to infrastructure.
Do you find at all, with the claims that are coming through, that I remember as a reporter that you would have had roads being closed during service delivery protests, but it almost seems as though that the NT has been turned up, where it is now where the target now is state buildings, not just closing of roads?
So I wouldn't. So the road closures with burning of tires in the road, that in itself is destruction of property. That road that we start, when the road gets damaged, the road has to be rebuilt. The road has to be fixed. Further to that, the vehicles that's traveling on that road get stoned or as well and damaged. And then also in terms of buildings, it's not just state buildings that we find, but also private buildings that gets damaged in these protests. We can take back in terms of 2015, 21 schools in one area being damaged and burnt in a single act of protest. So those are the type of acts that we find: burning of clinics, burnings of schools, burnings of infrastructure that is there for the community usage. We've seen here in the Western Cape in last year and the year before, youth centers, facilities that is meant to uplift and help the communities being damaged and burned. So these are the type of acts that we do see coming through in terms of SASRIA claims.
Okay. Okay, just quickly then, Mukoni Rachitanga joining us also for this conversation. In a nutshell, Mukoni, in a minute or so, can you please give us an assessment of what you've noticed when it comes to these service delivery protests?
Well, good evening, Aldrin, and the viewers and my fellow panelists. Look, this is a very complex question, and it requires certainly more than a minute. But I think that
if it requires more than a minute, let's then quickly, Mukoni, just quickly hold that thought there. Let's then quickly go to an ad break, and when we come back, then you can give us over a minute assessment of these destruction of public properties. We'd love to hear from you as well. Please use the hashtag SABC Unfiltered. What you make of the destruction of public property that has been ongoing, especially during service delivery protests. But also, there's a flip side to the story that has already been introduced by the Minister of Transport, and that is syndicates being involved in the destruction of public infrastructure. And welcome back to Unfiltered with me, Aldrin Simpiers. We have a conversation looking at the destruction of public property. Mukoni Rachitanga was giving us an assessment just before we went to the ad break. Mukoni, the minister was clear earlier on that the destruction of public property is a crime. But nevertheless, some people have argued that this is also a form of protest to show the state how angry the people are.
No, sure. I mean, the minister is correct. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Anybody who tells you otherwise really has a problem, and they need to explain to the nation why they would justify something as horrendous as all of this. I mean, you saw what happened in Vuwani a couple of years ago, where more than 40 schools were burnt down. Now, surely anybody who wants to justify the burning of one classroom has got a problem. But surely the minister, I have no doubt that the minister is correct with regard to the organized criminal nature of it. But as it relates to this thing also happens more generally, and I think that it illustrates one of the fundamental problems that this South African society is facing, which is that we've got a general problem of the breakdown of the rule of law, and we must face it as a nation, and we must address it. But you see, the restoration of the rule of law also requires sustained engagement with society around issues that have got to do with our rights and responsibilities as society. And I think that generally there's been a decrease in a decline in that kind of engagement, whether it is between society and government and society and civil society.
Yeah.
There also needs to be, I think, government needs to set very clear, concrete examples. People who do these things need to be arrested. They need to be tried, and everybody needs to know if Mukoni goes and burns down a school. He was arrested, he was tried, and he was sentenced to so many years. But lastly, let me also say that this issue is also about good governance and law enforcement, because the social engagement that is required to mobilize society towards positive social conduct will not be well received if people think that the leadership, and in particular the political leadership, does not lead by example. So we do need to attend to that side of the issue.
Okay. Minister, let me ask you that question, because at least you have the benefit of now you are running a department, well, the political head of a department that is dealing with this issue of infrastructure, but also the anger coming from communities. And the flip side of that is also your experience in police as the police minister. Do you feel as well that what Mokoni is saying is the truth, that there is a general breakdown in adherence to the rule of law?
Mao Zedong says, deal with one to educate others. As long as the perpetrators of the criminal activity know that they can hide and they will not be found, they will continue business as usual. But once you strengthen the arm and the authority of the state, you clamp down, you arrest, you strengthen the law, like in the case of vandalism of public property, like in Prasa, in Transnet, and so on. You are arrested, you are charged with economic sabotage, you go to jail for a long time when you are found. Then it sends a message that this is not just theft. You appear before the judge, is theft, and then you can even get a fine, and then you go back. This indicates how they operate. The executor, the person who implement, is a lumpen proletariat. The person who benefit is sitting somewhere, is a big boss and all of that.
Yeah.
You find them everywhere. Zamas.
Yeah.
It's a syndicate. I don't want to talk about nationalities that are involved, but I can only say to you that the modus operandi is the same.
Why has it been difficult, then, Minister? Why has it been difficult to get to those heads, the ones that are running the syndicates, the ones who are pulling the strings?
It means the system is not keeping them busy, and it's not smoking them out of their holes. We are not getting there. Crime intelligence must get there.
Why not?
The state hand in terms of these issues must be strengthened. I can't answer that question.
So is it a problem with intelligence, do you say?
In terms of the capacity of the state to respond, I can only answer in as far as we, from a point of view of company, like us in Prasa, who have put in place to basically work with organs of state to fight back. But the state need to be strengthened. The biggest issue for me was we've got a big budget for crime intelligence, but we spent time in useless things, fighting over things that are not about the mandate of that outfit in terms of what it's supposed to do, to get to those syndicates and smoke them out. The state must get there. That's what is important.
Mm-hmm. So is it a problem with intelligence, do you say?
I am saying that intelligence might say it is operational, but when last did we arrest some of these big fishes who are smuggling drugs in the country? We see them on TV. And then who are behind these syndicates that operate at Prasa and that destroy public property. These thugs who call themselves RET, these are thugs, man. I mean, they are all over the place. They stopped a big operation there in the Eastern Cape N2. Even the investors, they packed and left the country. We have to start that project afresh. Who rules this country? Thugs. Basically stop a big operation of employment creation of our people and then close down big. I've been there. You have seen me probably. I've been there. It's a big operation, big job creation work. It literally closed down. Company had to close down because people are demanding 10%.
Who are these RET forces? They
are there. They are known. It's not even difficult to find them.
Can you give us a name?
Well, I don't know their names, Aldrin, but I can tell you and characterize them that RET is a misused word by thugs.
Okay.
Who basically go there and then demand 10%. Look, we in Sanral, when we go and build a road, we make it a point that SMMEs benefit. Big companies come, we build big roads, bridges and all of that, but we, as part of our policy, we say SMMEs and the locals, in terms of job creation, they must be trained, they must benefit. Then there comes this tax. They demand 10% to go straight to their pockets, and they've got the capacity and the audacity to basically stop the entire operation.
Okay, let's just quickly go to an ad break, Minister. When we come back, we continue the conversation. I'd also like to hear from Farida, from the investigations that they have done as a company. What is it that they've come up with in terms of these syndicates that the Minister speaks of?
As taxpayers, we are not happy. We are constantly being taxed. There are no service deliveries. We have bylaws, they're not being implemented.
Just look at the city of Johannesburg. It's filthy, it's dirty.
Okay, those are some of the views of our viewers. Farida, just quickly wanted to find out from you, from Sastria's side, when the claim comes in, are you able to investigate and get to the bottom of what may have informed the destruction of this property?
So SASRIA claims is very specifically linked to the perils that we do cover. So in terms of our business model, our claims would filter through from an underlying insurance company who would initiate an investigation based on the claim that's been posed to them. Should the peril of should the proximate cause or the origin of that claim deemed to be a SASRIA peril, we then take over that investigation and we then initiate our further investigation. So we make use of specialists such as loss adjusting companies and specialists such as investigators to investigate the merit of the claim and the circumstances surrounding the event in itself. Because of the nature of the claims that we cover, things such as vandalism by a syndicate of that nature would not necessarily constitute a SASRIA peril. And therefore, some of those type of claims would then end up with an underlying insurer versus a SASRIA peril where we have found incidents where there has been claims coming through to SASRIA due to whatever reason. Our investigation process is for our investigators to go out and investigate. We also make use of police reports, and we engage with the police via our service providers to understand and find out exactly the reason for this and what was the root cause, the stem that led to this peril. And like I said, mostly with us, because of the perils, we have service delivery protests, we've got strikes, we've got riots, and if there should be a syndicate involved that initiates these activities within the community, that is in terms of how we work with the municipality and the local police services.
Okay, Farida, I just quickly need you to hold that thought over there. Let's just quickly say goodbye to our SABC 3 viewers. Remember that the conversation continues on the SABC News channel, that is on the DSTV Bouquet channel 404. Okay, and welcome back as we have this conversation looking at the destruction of public property. Mokoni Rachitanga also joining us for this conversation. Mokoni, just listening into what the Minister had to say earlier on, that once we look at the protest action taking place, that you can't really just stop at protest action, but also getting to the bottom of what leads to the protest action and whether or not there is anyone who would be benefiting out of this.
No, I totally agree with the Minister, and what the Minister has been saying confirms what I was saying earlier on about this challenge of the breakdown of the rule of law. And take, for example, the 10%ers that he is talking about. They've been there for a very long time, and they hide behind their membership to various social formations. Mm-hmm. And that must be then tackled head on. But I must also emphasize the need for broader social engagement, because the the most effective way of isolating these criminals, ultimately, sure, the police must act, and they must act decisively. But the best guarantee is that society needs to be mobilized to understand that anybody who burns a school, a clinic, a police van, an ambulance is an enemy of the people. And that's how we need to characterize that person. Mm-hmm. Anybody who comes to a building site where a clinic is being built or a road and demands 10% or whatever percentage is an enemy of the people, because what they are really demanding is that money, public money, must be diverted from doing what it is supposed to do to their own pockets, unjustifiably so. So we need to, I think, government, civil society, political parties, religious formations, everybody needs to really look at this thing as a challenge, and to mobilize society to say we must act against, because these people are very few. It's not like you are dealing with the majority of the population. Mm-hmm. But they are very few and they can be defeated. There was a time in this country when we had street committees that dealt with all manner of misdemeanors, successfully so. But they did that. We did that because we were organized. Yeah. And we need to emphasize that message. If we don't organize ourselves as a society, we will continue to be victims to these few criminals who will terrorize us and our children to submission.
Okay, Minister, let me just quickly hear from you then. My hypothesis is also that with the destruction of these public property, especially during the so-called, and sometimes people would say these are service delivery protests, in actual fact, this is a business model because, as Farida has indicated, that the property is destroyed, but sure, you need to restore that property, meaning that there would be money that's spent on that property, meaning that there would be a tender that goes out and people will be tendering for that particular tender. Sorry, Minister, just quickly unmute.
That is correct. The modus operandi will be analyzed in the war room by those who gather information and intelligence to determine as to whether indeed what Farida says, that is how it actually apply from a point of organized crime. So I agree with her from the point of view of research. That is how some protests are generated to achieve a particular result. There are genuine protests in society where people protest about water, about lack of service delivery for this and that. But out of 80% she's talking about, probably you'll find that 40% of the protests are self-generated to achieve a particular outcome. I went to Mpumalanga one time. I was deployed to defuse a protest there when I was at Luthuli House. It lasted for a long time, and I arrived there. I asked, what are people protesting about? Now, the roads were fine. There were libraries built, service delivery was there. But they were saying, no, they demand service delivery, this and that, things that don't exist. Only to find out, no, these chaps wanted their own municipal manager, okay? So that the javelin can continue of tenders in the municipality. So the guy who was there was not their favorite. He was not corrupt. They wanted him out. And that was in the demand, but it was disguised as a protest, and it was on TV. Burning tires, bringing the township to a total standstill. But when we go deeper, we meet with the structures, we meet with community leaders, and then we make our own independent assessment as people who don't live in that area. Are There was no protest there. There was good service delivery, but they disguised a service delivery thing in order for themselves to achieve their ends.
Yeah.
Who was who was the mass at the protest? Young, lumpen, unemployed youth, and all of that, lumpen proletariat. And then those were the ones who have been sponsored to organize this protest and all of that. The citizens of the township themselves, of the area, were not involved.
Yeah. So
they were basically standby. I mean, they were looking at what is happening. They were not involved. So you get kids, this youth that is unemployed, being marshaled to do this for big. So that is the dimension it takes. When it comes to the criminal activity in terms of stealing of property for the people, I mean, out of vandalism, you've got another market.
Yeah.
You see, like the one I've explained, they take it to Mozambique, out of Mozambique, East Asia, they melt the copper, lots of money. So you've got multi-dimensional operation in this. In the political front, of course, it's a javelin. Yeah.
Okay, when we come back, Minister, let's have the conversation about the political front itself and whether there is any link at all to good governance or lack of good governance and the level of service delivery protests that we have been seeing over the past few years. And welcome back to Unfiltered with me, Alderin St-Pierre. We focus this evening on the destruction of public property. Minister, let's start off with you again. I just quickly want to read a quote here from Jacob Mamabulo, the MEC for Infrastructure in Gauteng, who said about 2 years ago, to have a successful campaign, we must conduct an analysis or an assessment of why do people destroy public property during protest. We must probe the historical factors and interrogate the root causes of this phenomenon in order to understand why is it that communities express themselves in a very violent way and burn clinics and school libraries as well. Minister, when we go to these protests, you'd hear people saying that the government only listens to violence. It's only when there's violence where the government will then respond. If you have a peaceful protest, you won't have the media coverage, of course, number one. But number two, you won't have any response from the officials.
Government is bound to respond to anarchy by quelling it, getting deeper to understand what the protest is about. But the things we pick up most of the time is that these are not the genuine fighters of the people fighting over demands of the people and seeking to change the situation for the better and wanting to hold government accountable. This is just a group of disorganized, thugs who basically come together and then have mastered the political jargon, and then they misuse it. And some of them come from the structures of our own organizations. And then they take those and then mobilize society and all of that around their interests. Maybe they want to get rid of the mayor, and then they've been defeated in the democratic processes in the party. So what is the fastest thing that they can do to get rid of the mayor is to basically organize protest. Yep. We meet these things, they happen all the time. But when the media arrives and the cameras are there, it is very difficult in the heat of that protest to dissect the situation properly and say that this is a criminal act, it's got nothing to do with the masses and their demands, it is this and that problem. You will then be told that the mayor must go.
Are you then arguing, Minister, that leaders, political leaders, have been responsive and there's absolutely no need for people to take to the streets?
People take to the streets for genuine concerns.
Sure.
And in most of the instances, the masses are hijacked. And then the people are hijacked, they are misused in these protests. These protests, some of them have got nothing to do with the real situation of the people. There are protests where the people have got to protest. There is a pipe burst. The municipality doesn't do anything about it. And therefore it's a sewage in the middle of the township. The masses rise to say, where are you? I was in Ekurhuleni. I was in Ekurhuleni where there was a big protest of the community. They didn't burn tires, and the pipe and the alignment leveling of the road was a problem for the community there. We brought municipality, they intervened, fixed the problem without any protest. It was genuine. But under normal circumstances, that could actually land in wrong hands, where those who, for nefarious reasons, can simply hijack that and mobilize the people for a different thing altogether. So these things do happen, Aldrin. What I mean in conclusion is that we as politicians and public representatives, we are duty bound to respond to every protest, violent or protest organized by groups. We have to be there to respond. We've got to avail ourselves to talk to the people and seek to take them away from the jaws of these dangerous people with nefarious intentions who are doing things for themselves, not for the communities.
Okay, Farida, just quickly in conclusion, from some of the claims that have come through, have you been able to gather that some of these claims probably come through in mass during political instability within the governing party or whichever political party, or when there are certain processes that are underway in a certain political party? Is there any link that you can make to that at all?
Well, Aldrin, there's two things I would just want to comment on. The one is in terms of delivery, service delivery protests, and just latching on to what the ministers just said. What we have done in SASRI is we've got a partnership with Santam, as an example, called the Partnership for Risk and Resilience. And we went to an area like Ehlanzeni, engaging with the community. So we funded for community engagement to understand the root cause of what is it that takes a community from an unhappy situation into a violent protest. And in addressing those in partnership with the municipality, trying to quell that fire that's within the community. Addressing that is systemic in trying to help the community find themselves better ways of expressing themselves. So those are the type of engagements that we do as well, where we do research within the communities. We have companies go in and do community risk-based assessments, understanding from the community perspective, what is it that drives them to these behaviors. And some of those insights has been valuable in terms of addressing the underlying root problems. And that can only happen when we've got a good partnership and relationship with the local municipality, as well as the community leaders and the youth themselves as well, and also within our partnership that we do facilitate. So these are things I concur with what the ministers say. If you go to the root cause and understand what is it that takes people from the democratic right to protest into a violent situation that ends up in destruction, that needs to be addressed. In terms of your question, in terms of the claims that we do see portraying to SASRIA, it is we apolitical on this, and what we find is nationwide. The service delivery protest does not, it doesn't relate to one specific party or one specific incident. And what we have found is in terms of local elections, when local elections occurs, that is when we find that these type of protests actually is on the increase. National elections, we don't see the same patterns, but when we do have local elections, that we do find that those are the times when the increase.
So probably an expectation that this year as well, as we head to the local government elections, that we could see an increase, considering that even with the lockdown levels as well, that some of the restrictions are being reduced.
Yeah, so that is if we look at the pattern that we've seen in the past, that could be a possibility, yes.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Farida. Mugoni, just in conclusion, your take on whether we are able to insulate the state, its properties, and the people from whatever is happening within the political wrangling of any political party.
There's no doubt in my mind that obviously plays a part, but there are two critical issues that I think we need to raise and follow up on. The first is that what the minister is saying is that we need a proper characterization of our problems, because if we don't properly characterize them, we will promote many false debates and solutions that will not hold. The second is that I think that it is time that we change the political narrative in this country. When Tanzania became independent from British colonial rule in the 60s, President Julius Nyerere came up, conceived a slogan which did not only end up as a slogan, but translated into a political program, and that was called Uhuru Legacy in Kiswahili, which means freedom and hard work. Mm-hmm. When we became free in 1994, very correctly, we said that we were going to deliver services to our people. There is nothing wrong with that. We also said that the people should be partners in development. But I think that over time, this partnership element of the people in development became subordinated, and government came to occupy the larger role in the development agenda, and I think that we need to change the political narrative so that people and government become partners.
Yeah,
the people are not just passive bystanders, because part of the problem that we're facing is that somebody's roof is leaking, and they wait for government to come and fix their roof. And if government doesn't come to fix their roof, they go and dig up a road.
Yeah.
And that is a problem.
Okay, let me just quickly get the Minister to have the final say. Minister, just quickly on the hijacking of buildings. How big of a problem is that? Do you know whether there are any state buildings as well that are being subjected to this?
No, it's huge in Johannesburg. When I was in the police, I visited a lot, but it's not a police problem. It is a problem of the municipality. The owners of those buildings, some of them are no longer here. They are overseas. Some of them, we can't trace them. We've got to bring those buildings down. And I think the municipality must focus on that, because those are safe havens for criminals, basically. I mean, guys with petty crimes, the one who pickpocket you downtown in Johannesburg, they run in this building. One is inside that building, you'll never know who did that petty crime and all of that. But those are safe havens for criminality. And a lot of undocumented foreigners are in those buildings. Right in central Johannesburg, Hillbrow, and in the city center of Johannesburg. So hijacked buildings, they are many. They are many. And they must be destroyed. They must be brought down. It must be a campaign. The municipality, Johannesburg Metro, must do that. It's not. It becomes a police problem, because police have got to get inside those buildings, chasing these criminals who have pickpocketed this and that. They are undocumented. They kill you. They hijack your car. They do everything, and they disappear there. So they are not in our population register, so we can't find them.
Okay.
In terms of the forensics and everything that is conducted. So that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Minister. Really appreciate your time. Farida, really appreciate your time as well. And thank you to Mkoni Rachitanga for joining us for this conversation. And thank you for choosing Unfiltered with me, Aldrin Sampier, this evening. We're back again next week, same time, same place, right here on the SABC News channel, as well as SABC 3. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Totsiens.